Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. Please subscribe if you haven't yet already. It is a red button beneath me somewhere, and if you click on that you'll be subscribed to my channel. There's also a white bell next to that, and if you click on that you'll get an alert every time I upload new content, which would be awesome. And if you like this video, please click the thumbs up button. That would make me very happy. Today's video is another installment in Stranger Things. Today's video is about the episode Dig Dug, and autumnal makeup is on deck, focusing on the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. So if you'd like to see how I got this look and hear a little bit about Stranger Things Dig Dug, please keep watching. All right, I've already gone in with moisturizer and whatnot. I'm now gonna go in with my MAC Paint Pot and Painterly. So we open at the buyer's house and everything is super quiet in the house, kind of alarmingly quiet a little bit. I'm gonna go in with Ounce all over my lid with kind of a fluffy brush. This is a furless brush that I think came in an Ipsy box from a while ago. So then Mike and Will are talking, and Will says, "It's like I feel what the shadow monster is feeling. I see what he's seeing. It's like he's reaching into Hawkins more and more, and the more he spreads, the more I feel." And fluffy blending brush and chaser. Mike says, kind of looking on the bright side of things, that you could be our spy into the upside down. And then obviously then the next kind of worry is, like, what if it's reciprocal? What if the monster can see what Will is seeing? And then we do see Hopper, and Hopper's getting attacked by the vines. He passes out. Same brush and sauced. It's kind of like they're spitting on him, and he passes out, and then the opening that he went into by his truck is closed up. Then Nancy and Jonathan are on the road, and they get one room with 2 beds. And Nancy says, "Don't you think it's weird that we only seem to hang out when the world's about to end?" Smaller brush and He Devil. Then Nancy kind of offers up the palm of her hand across the, between the 2 beds, and they start comparing the war wounds from the end of last season when they had to cut their hands to lure the monster out, and they share kind of a lingering look, and then they pull back awkwardly. And she tells Jonathan, after everything happened, you just disappeared. And Jonathan says that kind of Will was what he was doing, well, that was what his concern was. And she says that she waited, but she waited only for a month. So it's just a little bit painful, all this stuff going on. And then Nancy ultimately turns her back on him completely, which is just sad. I'm gonna go in with my little Real Techniques brush and In Fuego. Yeah, and then she turns her body and ignores him in the bedroom. Then we are back at the buyer's house, and Will does have a premonition, so he's spying on the monster, and he sees that Hopper is being attacked, that he's gonna die. And then we're back in the underneath the vines, and Hopper comes to. He starts puking up some disgusting slime. He's looking for a way out. He seems to be trapped, and he uses his knife to cut off part of his shirt to make kind of a makeshift scarf. And then he's at a fork in the road, and he breaks one of his cigarettes in half and leaves it, kind of like a breadcrumb trail, or some kind of a trail for whoever might be coming to find him. And then when he goes down that route, that path, the vines close in behind him. I'm gonna go in with a flat brush, and I'm gonna go in with Scorched all over my lid. Then we are back at Lucas's house, and we've seen his parents before this season, but we haven't really had a conversation with them this season. And this is where Lucas is asking his father, what do you do when mom's mad at you? How do you make her not be mad at you? Because he's obviously thinking about Max. And the father says, Lucas's dad says, that he apologizes, and then he gets her whatever she wants. And they're all 4 at the table, Lucas and his sister and his parents. And Lucas says, even when she's wrong, and without missing a beat, the father says, she's never wrong, son. And then we're back at Dustin's. I'm going with a little more of this. and his mom was worried about the cat, and he's on this pretend phone call with someone who has spotted the cat outside of the town. It's very much like he's parenting his parent, which is fascinating. I'm gonna go in with the same brush with Steal a Kitten. The one thing that the Naked Heat palette is missing, I think, is a lighter colored shimmer. I'm gonna go in with the same brush, and I'm not using my color switch or anything. I just want to lay something brighter in the center of my lid. Blend this a little bit more with my Real Techniques blending brush. All right, so yeah, he's on the phone and pretending that Muse has been found outside of town, which obviously he hasn't. And then he starts to lure Dart out of the house with some bologna into the, I guess it's the, I'm from California, we don't have basements much in California, but I guess it's like one of those Midwestern like shelters, cellars, basements, where you open up like the doors from the outside. So he's kind of leading him into that. Hi to everyone that has a cellar or a basement. And then he finally, after a little while, gets him into the basement, and he says, "Sorry, but you killed my cat." And it did. The animal did. Still really unclear about what Dustin's connection is to the creature, because it does seem like he's emotionally connected, and maybe it's just that he was taking care of it, but it's interesting. Then, oh my goodness, we are at Terry Ives's house, and 11 has found her way to the house, and it's the same woman from last season, her sister, and the woman doesn't want her to come in, and is basically like saying, you know, whatever you're selling or whatever kind of religiousness you want to impart upon me, I don't want any part of it. And then 11 opens up the door with her brain, and she comes in and she says, "I want to see Mama." And she goes into the house. Terry is sitting in front of the TV, and this is what Terry is saying, because we've heard her say these things before in last season, and also in one of the last scenes that we saw with 11 kind of in that nether kind of world where she goes when she's like psychically connected to something, like she did last season in the saltwater bath, and what she's doing this season with the television and the radio static. And what she's saying is, "Breathe sunflower rainbow, 3 to the right, 4 to the left, 450. That's the phrase that she's been saying all of this time. Then we go to Murray and Nancy and Jonathan, and Murray again is the private detective that Nancy's parents hired to work on everything. And they have come to his house with the tape that Nancy made in the last episode at Hawkins' lab, where Dr. Owen is talking about, like, admitting that they have something there, and saying that, you know, the Soviets would be dangerous if they knew that we had it, because they might attack us thinking that we were going to use it against them, and it would be dangerous if it got into their hands and they used it to attack us. He invites them in. Charlotte Tilbury Charlotte Tilbury Veil Mineral Primer. Charlotte Tilbury Veil Mineral Primer. And they have some small talk, and they see his, like, incident wall. And Nancy says that his timeline's wrong, and that the girl with the buzzed hair is not Russian, that her name is 11, and she's from Hawkins' lab. And then Jonathan says, "You might want to sit down for this." Then we're at the arcade, and Dig Dug is out of order. So Max goes to the back room. The arcade guy leads her to the back room, where there's another Dig Dug ready for her. But Lucas is waiting for her, and he's going to tell her the story. And he says the story of Will. Last year, Will didn't get lost in the woods. He got lost somewhere else. And then we are back to the buyer's house, and Will is trying to draw where he thinks that he saw Hopper, and she picks it up and tries to look through the house to see where it might be to try to match it up, but she's not having much luck trying to find it. And they find it on the map, not the map, but they find it in the house, in the drawings that he's made. It is a picture of the fork in the tunnels, the fork where Hopper left his cigarette, but they don't know where it is in the real world. And then Bob shows up because Will is sick, and he comes with a care package, and Joyce is trying to shoo him away because the reality of everything that's happening is ridiculous. But then she thinks about the fact that maybe he could help. So she says that she'd like him to come in and help, but he can't ask questions. So he comes in and he's starting to kind of ask questions and has no idea what it is that he's looking at. Obviously, it looks crazy. And he wants to make sure that they're safe and that they're okay. And then finally he notices this thing on the I think it's on a window that looks like Lover's Lake is what he says. And oh, and also too, at some point before he begins looking, he asks if it is going to lead to pirate treasure, which is an obvious Goonies reference. And so he's looking, and then he figures out that this thing is Lover's Lake. And he realizes that it's not a puzzle, that it's a map. So once he sees where Lover's Lake is, he can then kind of figure everything else out. Hopper is still in the tunnels, getting deeper and deeper. And then he finds a cigarette lighter, and he kind of makes a torch and is kind of using that to, because we know that the critters are not good with fire. And he figures that out. So he pushes through part of the tunnel with his lighter. Then Dustin is calling everybody and nobody is answering him. And he is doing this all by himself. And he is calling Lucas and he's calling Code Red on the radio. And then Erica finally intercepts it. She's picking up a He-Man character, from Lucas's room. And she intercepts it and says, yeah, I know it's Code Red, but you have to shut your mouth. And then she turns off the walkie-talkie because Dustin isn't around, because Dustin is at the arcade with Max. Oh, Becky. So then we're back with Elle and Terry, and Becky is the name of the sister. And Becky shows her the room that Terry had made for her, the nursery that she had made for her, for Jane, and says that she wants to help her, but in order to really be able to do that, she's going to have to talk to Becky. She's going to have to be truthful with Becky. 11 will have to be. And then they are up in 11's old bedroom, and the lamps start flickering. And 11 starts kind of following the flickering, and Becky says that it's just because the house has old wiring. And 11 obviously says it's Mama. And she goes downstairs and finds Terry, and Terry has blood coming from her nose. And then she turns on the TV and flips channels around until she finds Static and says that Mama wants to talk. Then we're back at the Byers' house, and Bob has found out where everything is, where they think that Hopper is. Then Dustin and Steve. Dustin goes right to Mike's house, and Mike is with Will. And there's a really fun exchange between Gat and Matarazzo and Mike's dad, where he says, like, Dustin says, do you know your phone's been busy for like an hour or something? And it's a fun exchange. And then he sees Steve showing up as he's leaving with a dozen roses, and he's muttering to himself that he's going to apologize, and what do I have to apologize for? Because really he doesn't have anything to apologize to Nancy for. Then Dustin takes the roses and throws them away and says, are those for Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler? No, they're for Nancy. And he says that there's more important stuff happening and asks if Steve still has the bat with the nails in it. Then we are back with Hopper in the Upside Down, and he is trying to fight them off, but this time he really succumbs and he's covered with them, and we can hear him kind of screaming quietly because it's through all the ground and all the vines and everything up by his truck. And it seems like all hope is lost for Hopper, except we know that Will has had a premonition. Then we're back at the arcade, and Lucas has told Max everything, but Max thinks that he is lying to her. I mean, I suppose that's realistic because it's a ridiculous story. It doesn't sound like it could possibly be real. That's one of those things that came up in this series a lot. And also, I mean, it's happened a lot with Joyce in the first season too, when she was sounding crazy because the things that were happening were just unreal. So she doesn't believe it, and they're finally out in the lobby or in the actual arcade, and she starts to say things, mentioning the Demogorgon, mentioning Hawkins Labs, and then Dustin covers her mouth up. And I think then is the first time that she realizes that maybe it's not all a lie. And then Billy drives up, Billy drives up and she tells Dustin not to come outside. And then Billy warns her again to stay away from him. And it does just seem like Billy is racist, which is just... ugh. Seems like that's why he wants her to stay away from him. But Speed You Through My Lips, I'm going to use NARS, one of the Charlotte Gainsbourg ones that came out. And this is in Blindfold. Then we are back at Murray's, and Nancy has just finished playing the tape where Dr. Owens admits pretty much to everything. And Murray stands up and walks around the kitchen, and he pours himself vodka, and one of them says vodka, and he says, yes, it's a central nervous system depressant, so yes, vodka. And then he puts on Billie Holiday. And I love this scene so much. And then Murray says that he's not the only one that they have to appeal to. He believes them, but there are other people that are going to need to believe them. And he says, your priests, your postmen, your teacher, the world at large, they won't believe any of this. And that people like their curtain, it makes them feel comfortable, and that the story that they're telling is just way too much. And then he's back into the kitchen and he takes a sip from his vodka and soda and he winces. The cocktail's too strong. This is genius. And he heads back into the kitchen to add more water to the mix, and watering it down makes it perfect. And Nancy says we water it down. They need to normalize the story. Think about something like that's scary but familiar. So A Leak at the Lab, something like 3 Mile Island. It needs to point to Hawkins' lab, but it can't be the truth because the truth is unbelievable. Then we're back at Hawkins' lab and Dr. Owens is looking at some soil samples. And this is when, and I'm not sure what happens here, but it looks like everything is connected. So they put some heat on one of the samples, the soil samples, and it starts to move kind of in a cyclone-y kind of tornado pattern. But then all the other flasks do the same thing, and I'm not sure what we're supposed to make of that, but it seems like maybe the biggest thing is that they're all connected. Everything's connected. Then we're back at the Ives house. Becky makes a blindfold for 11, and 11 cuts her off. She's talking and asking questions, Becky is, and 11 just tells her to stop talking. Then they're on this kind of ethereal plane. They see each other, and then Terry finally is able to grab 11's hand, and then we see the backstory. And this is where the words that she says come from. So it's breathe, sunflower, rainbow, 3 to the left, 4 to the right, 450 are the words. So we see Terry go into labor, but she's bleeding. So it's not like just that her water broke, but she's bleeding. Something is wrong. And she's wheeled into an operating room with some drugs. And then we see Dr. Brenner. Her baby is born and Dr. Brenner takes the baby away. And we hear the baby crying. We hear Jane crying. So it's not like she was born like a stillborn. She was born breathing and crying. And then we see Terry awaken and there are sunflowers next to her bed. And Becky tells Terry that Jane died. And she doesn't believe it because she heard the baby crying and she just knows. And then time passes and we see her at a safe and she's turning the safe 3 to the right, 4 to the left. She grabs a gun, Terry does. She goes back to Hawkins' lab and then she shoots the security guard in the chest. She goes up the stairs, sees a room with a rainbow on the outside. That's where the word rainbow comes from. And she opens up the room and she sees 2 girls, and one is Jane and one is an Indian kind of looking girl, a little bit older than Jane. And that's probably 8 from the first episode. And then security drags Terry away. And then she is strapped to a bed, and Dr. Brenner is going to give her electroshock therapy at 450, which is apparently really, really high. And that's where 450 comes from. And so these are the words: breathe, because they're telling her to breathe because she's in labor; sunflower, because of the side of the bed; rainbow on the door, 3 to the right, 4 to the left, and then 450. And these are the things, I guess, that have kept her tethered, emotionally tethered all these years. Then we are outside of where Hopper is, down underneath. And then as they're driving, Will immediately says to turn right. He knows where to go. And Mike says super spy because he can see where everything is. Then Bob and Joyce go down into the ditch that Hopper dug. They kind of start digging it out. Will and Mike stay upstairs. Then Bob is downstairs with her, not downstairs, but underneath. They kind of dig through and they go downstairs. They go underneath, downstairs. They go underneath. And she calls out for Hopper and she finds his broken cigarette and she follows the trail. And then we start to see the Hawkins vans show up upstairs. Upstairs, above ground. Sorry about that, but you know what I mean. And then we are back in the tunnel. Bob and Joyce find Hopper choking to death by these vines. And Hopper says knife and they cut him free. And then when he's standing, Hopper says hi Jim and Jim says hi Bob, and it's ridiculous but funny. And then as he's free, the guys in the hazmat suits show up. The guys from who are above ground that have come from Hawkins. And then Hopper grabs his hat. He reaches back for it. It seems like very Indiana Jones. There are a lot of things happening with his hat that feel very Indiana Jones. And then the lab starts burning with their torches. But as that happens, we see Will upstairs first kind of crumple, and then he goes into this sustained convulsion that's just going on and on and on. And don't know, I mean, obviously he's connected to the beings, but it seems like it's way more intense than it's been before. And that's the end of the episode. This is so good. I am really enjoying this season a lot, and I am really enjoying having an excuse to dig in and examine it more thoroughly. So thank you so much for watching. A lot to do in the world, a lot to do on YouTube, and I really appreciate the time that you took to spend with me today. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.